Good afternoon. I'm Diane Macedo. That was the legal team and family of George Floyd speaking outside the courthouse in Minneapolis after a hearing for all four former officers charged in Floyd's death. Derek Chauvin appeared in court in person for the first time since being charged with murder in the case. He was the officer captured on video kneeling on Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes. Now, Floyd's death in May ignited a racial reckoning across the country that has lasted throughout the summer, with tens of thousands of people taking to the streets to protest police violence and racial inequality. And there were peaceful protests outside the Minneapolis courthouse today. You could even hear those protesters as those close to Floyd spoke just now. Here's what Attorney Ben Crump had to say as he kicked off that press conference.
We demand justice for George Floyd Jr. The only overdose that killed George Floyd was an overdose of excessive force and racism by the Minnesota Minneapolis Police Department.
That was Attorney Ben Crump responding to an argument from the defense. It sounds like they're going to be trying to argue that George Floyd died of an overdose. You heard Ben Crump's response to that. We also heard from some of Floyd's family members. Let's take a listen to that.
The one thing I want is accountability. Growing up, that's what I was taught. Be accountable for your actions. If you do the crime, you do the time. So why is it different for these guys? It shouldn't be different. And it will not be different, because we will get justice for my brother.
And those are just some of the big highlights, as we heard again from the legal team and the family of George Floyd after this hearing for the four former officers charged in his death. Our Alex Perez has been covering the story from the very beginning. We saw Alex there asking them a question, and Alex joins me live now from outside the courthouse. Alex, we heard from Ben Crump and the rest of the legal team, as well as Floyd's family. They responded to some of the things that happened in the courtroom. What came out of the courtroom today? What kind of arguments happened there?
Yeah, Diana, you have to forgive me. I have to keep my mask on because we have to can't keep a safe distance from people here right now. But a long legal proceeding in court today. The hearing was about 3 hours and a lot of legal housekeeping. Now, what most important to say is that there are three things that the judge is still working to decide on, and that is whether there will be a change of venue, whether the jury will remain anonymous, and whether all four former cops will be tried together or separately. The judge has not made a decision yet on those motions. But in court, you heard Benjamin Crump there reacting to some of what happened in court. In court and through court filings, we learned that some of the defense attorneys want to argue that George Floyd died because of a drug overdose as opposed to the asphyxiation caused by the knee on his neck. And as you heard the attorneys for the family there and the family members themselves say, they feel this is an attack on his character. They feel like they're trying to kill George Floyd twice, and they say they're not going to stand for that. And you saw they very adamantly spoke out against that. Now, in court, the judge did lay out some of the parameters. There is a tentative trial date set for March 8th of 2021. The judge says he does intend to sequester the jury. And at this point, Diane, the judge says he believes this trial will go about 6 weeks, 2 weeks to select a jury and another 4 weeks of testimony before he hopes that jury can reach a verdict. But at this point, we still don't know if all four of these former officers are going to be tried together or separately. The officers that are not Derek Chauvin, and Chauvin is the officer seen with his knee on Floyd, those other three officers, their defense attorneys are trying to distance themselves from former officer Derek Chauvin. They argue, those defense attorneys argue, that Chauvin is the one who is responsible for Floyd's death. Whether this will all happen in one trial or 4 separate trials still remains to be seen. Diane?
And Alex, I know the other question is a change of venue. That often comes up in cases that have received a lot of publicity. We heard the legal team there talking about how the world is watching. How big of a concern is that the publicity in this case may somehow keep these officers from getting a fair trial?
Yeah, all of the defense attorneys are making that argument, but particularly the attorney for former Officer Tu Tao arguing that it would be impossible to find a jury, seat a jury here for this case. But the judge made it very clear, moving the case from this county to another county in Minnesota or anywhere else in the country would not change that, because this case, this story has gotten so much publicity. The judge says he doesn't believe there's anyone in the world who hasn't heard about the George Floyd case, and it's going to be a matter, the judge says, of instituting the right questionnaires, the right rules, and the right process to make sure you can get a jury that, even though they might have had some exposure to this case, can still remain impartial and listen to the jury rules that will be put in front of them. Diane?
And Alex, we heard those protesters as Floyd's legal team and family were speaking. We can hear them a bit behind you now. What's the scene like there?
Yeah, you might be able to make out there's a much smaller group behind me here. We're behind this fence. This is where the authorities here in Hennepin County have put the media. But behind the fence, you can see some signs. You can see several demonstrators still here. They showed up well before the hearing started. There was a much bigger group, and you can see this smaller group is what's left here. The crowd, very adamant. They say they do not want the George Floyd case to disappear from the headlines. They're worried that as the country focuses on COVID-19 or other things, returning to some sort of normal life, that they're going to forget about this case. And so a lot of these people say they're going to continue to show up to these hearings because they want to make sure that what happened to George Floyd is not lost. Diane?
And Alex, as you mentioned, some of the major points of this hearing still haven't been decided. So what happens next in this trial?
Yeah, so as of now, Diane, the only court date that's tentatively set is that trial date, March 8th of 2021. We do expect that the judge is going to make a decision on some of those bigger motions. Those decisions that the judge will make will probably be announced through filings. Those court filings will then become public and available to the media and everybody else. But when exactly the judge will decide on those issues remains unclear. He didn't really set a timeline in court today.
All right, our Alex Perez from Minneapolis. We appreciate it, Alex. Thank you. And there you have it, wrapping up that hearing for the 4 officers charged in the death of George Floyd. We, of course, will continue monitoring this case as it develops. And in the meantime, we will go back to our regular programming. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, everybody.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.